Last week, we tested HLN's 20 kilowatt powerhouse diesel hydronic heater. And let me tell you, it did not disappoint. I put this thing through a 100-gallon torture test where I applied a load to the system similar to what it would experience if it was heating a small house or a cabin or a structure like that. And it did not disappoint. It delivered 19.4 kilowatts at 71% efficiency. That is very respectable. In fact, that is the highest efficiency out of the box of any hydronic heater I've tested. You see, that test took an hour and 5 minutes to complete, and I had plenty of time to walk around and think, and I felt the strong exhaust heat coming off this unit. It's got a very big blower fan on it, and it was putting out a lot of heat. And I thought, if there was any way I could scavenge and capture that exhaust heat, we could really improve the efficiency. But let me be clear, that is not recommended by HLN. If you restrict this exhaust, you change the air-fuel ratio and you will potentially soot up the burner and shorten the service lifespan. That's where this guy comes in. This is a 3-inch large core air-to-water intercooler. Now, I realize this is not designed for exhaust gases. This is designed to cool the inlet charge air for a turbocharged car, but I honestly feel like in this scenario, it should work. For one reason, the exhaust on the HLN is a much smaller diameter than the intercooler. And I don't feel like this will pose much of a restriction to the system. Second of all, I plan to run the cool water from the reservoir through the intercooler first, then onto the heater. This is the first time I've done that, giving this the best chance to really improve efficiency. I am very excited to see what sort of numbers we get out of an already very efficient unit. Stick around, that's coming next. So I have the HLN 20 kilowatt heater mounted to the bench. Its output is just roughly running to this air to water intercooler. Cold water is drawn from the cooler into the intercooler, is warmed by the exhaust, and then is drawn up into the heater and then back into the cooler. Now for this test, I wanted a more significant heat load than just a 5-gallon bucket because this 20 kilowatts blows that away. So I've got 10 gallons of water in a cooler. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. This is kind of a thrown together setup here. And it's basically just a proof of concept. I would never install a unit this way. Let's fire this thing up. It does have a really nice controller. It's basically just an on and off switch. You can't set like a temperature. This does ramp up full bore to 75 degrees Celsius, and then it turns off. So when this is running, if you can't hear me, I do apologize. It is on. Let me get my notes. Once the unit spools up and really starts ramping up and producing some heat, I will start a timer. And we'll go from there. 8:21 even. 8210. Timer started. 18:3. This is warming up already. So it's 44 up here, 20 down here. Starting to see some steam develop as the intercooler heats up. Condensation. We're at 46, 47. That's it. Five, 362. 536.2. 8 minutes and 49 seconds. Final temperature still rising, 74.9, basically 75. All right, here are the results from that test. We heated 10 gallons of water from 8.2 degrees Celsius to 75.5 degrees Celsius in 8 minutes and 49 seconds. And we consumed 284.8 grams of diesel fuel to do this task. Now, plugging those numbers in, what that gives us is an efficiency rating of 74% and a kilowatt output rating of 17.2 kilowatt for this test. Now, I'm a little disappointed. I honestly expected more. The really high efficiency numbers I got were from a 100-gallon stress test. And this test is so small for the size of this heater. The intercooler is just starting to get up to temperature as the test ends. I thought the 10-gallon test was going to prove this theory. No, we're gonna have to do the 100-gallon test. 100 gallons plumb, just like last time, into the heat exchanger first and then into the unit. So the first pass will be the coolest water. Let's get this thing fired up, see what it does. I will be covering the water tank with insulation to help prevent heat loss during this run, just like last time. Our initial temperature, 17.8 degrees C. Unit's starting to spool up now and build some heat. Hammer started. All right, the test has officially begun. I'm gonna let this run and probably clean the shop. I'll come back to you in an hour or so and let you know the results. Wish me luck. This tank starts to get soft at about 60 degrees Celsius, so I'll probably have to watch, see if the tank's gonna bow. All right, here's something a little concerning, is the amount of water that is collecting. I do understand that, we are cooling the exhaust down to pretty close to room temperature. That's 27.3, but it's pulling a lot of moisture out of the exhaust. I was worried that I had damaged the air to water intercooler. This is 88.6 degrees Celsius, 31, 29. There's a huge temperature gradient, and we're condensing all the moisture out of the exhaust. That's a lot of water. I think I'm just about ready to stop this test. I'm going to stop it when you consumed 2 liters of fuel. Trying to accurately line the meniscus up with the line up top, so it's exactly 2 liters. It's got to drop a little bit more. We're almost there. All right, time to stop the test. Off. Total time 45 minutes 42 seconds. Basically we'll round up to 43. Our end point is 61.3. all right, I had to stop for a minute and really crunch the numbers on this because the results of this test were startling, and I had to make sure I got this right before I brought to you a conclusion. Okay, let's go over the results. We heated a 100-gallon volume of water. Okay, our starting point was 17.8 degrees C. Our ending point was 61.3 degrees C at a time of 45 minutes and 43 seconds. Round it up there just a little bit. And we consumed 2 liters of diesel. So the way this calculation works is we know how much energy is stored in a given volume of diesel. And we also know how much energy it takes to raise a given volume of water. All right, those are the two variables. And then in between the two, we have the heater and the exchanger. So when you take the known amount of energy in the diesel and the known change in the water, you're left with a real world output when you combine these two of 25.1 kilowatts. So now we have exceeded the rating of this heater. Now we're at 25.1. The average output is 85,700 BTUs an hour. And the efficiency, when you take the energy in and the energy out, is 95%. That's the number that startled me. So I thought the 95% was a mistake until I realized that we were bringing the exhaust gas temperature down cool enough to make it condense. So this became a condensation boiler, meaning that the exhaust gas leaving the heater is hot. It's entering this intercooler, and as it moves down the intercooler toward the exit, it gets stripped of all its heat to the point to where it gets below the condensation point, the dew point, and all the water, all the moisture in the exhaust comes out and forms droplets and then drops on my floor. And it was operating in a condensing fashion for the bulk of the test. That is where we got an efficiency rating of 95%. We were extracting almost all the heat out of the exhaust for the bulk of the test. Where'd that 5% go? No system is perfect. You know, we're losing heat to the body of the heater. We're radiating heat off the body of the intercooler. And then, of course, you know, the combustion is not 100% perfect either. This experiment is not perfect. This is not a lab. This is just a garage. So let's not take that 95% and run with it. Let's just say if you take my error into the equation, let's say 90. I would be comfortable saying that we increased the output of this heater by 20%, from 71 to 90%. That is unbelievably good. That is really, really good. There are downsides, okay? When you're condensing all the moisture out of the exhaust, it becomes an acidic mix. Now it's mildly acidic, but it's got carbonic acid and other things in it. And over time, that will shorten the life of your exchanger here, your heat exchanger. And if the heater starts to run rich and produce soot, and you have that moisture inside of this, if this is not up to temperature yet, you're going to end up with a lot of soot collecting, fouling, and caking, and this could be a recipe for disaster. It performed really well during the 100-gallon test, but I don't know how this would be in real world, cycling on, cycling off, cycling on, cycling off. So, conclusions. Would I run this on my own rig? If this was not my primary source of heat, if this was a secondary source of heat, where it just did radiant floors and made potable hot water and stuff like that, yeah, I would toy around with this idea. I would sort of test it, because if this failed and the internal radiator cracked and all my coolant drained out, or this failed, you wouldn't be up the creek. You wouldn't be cold. You wouldn't freeze. On the other hand, if this is your primary source of heat, you could run this, but you're going to have to maintain it. I think you're going to have to wash it out, flush it out yearly. It'd almost be like I would say it would be kind of like a diesel particulate filter. They require yearly servicing. I think something like this would require servicing, where you would need to wash out the internals to keep any soot and debris off. Also, you wouldn't want that moisture to stay in here and freeze. If it's a really cold winter and you're blowing hot air through here, hot exhaust, and you're condensing all that moisture, if this doesn't get up temperature and actually evaporate all that water out, you could have a freezing problem. There's a lot of issues to address. Very cool idea. If you got this far in the video, I appreciate you for watching. To be clear, HLN does not pay me for these reviews. They did send me this unit to test. They don't control what I say. This is my opinion. They don't know that I am putting things on the exhaust of their heaters. They don't recommend this, so I'm kind of going against their rules to do it. If you're interested in something like this is not an off-the-shelf component. They don't sell this on their website, but they do make a lot of different sort of commercial size hydronic heaters. Reach out to Kevin. His email's down below. Tell him what you're looking for. Tell him what you're trying to do, and they will put something together like this. I told him sort of like what I was trying to do. I wanted to see if one of these could heat a house, a structure. And he said, let me put together a 20 kilowatt and you can test it. And that's the video that I linked at the beginning up at the top. So yeah, thanks for thanks for putting up with my crazy experiments. I hope you learned something. Not a bad idea. You just know you probably have to service it. I'll catch you in the next one.